There are three types of entities that can be used inside the variables section, and today we are going to talk about all three of them. But first, let's understand why we need variables inside our robot scripts. Well, think of it this way. When you write complex automated test cases or automated projects, you may find yourself in the situation when you want to reuse some strings, some data, or you simply want to put some values inside some entities with a friendly name, so you don't have to memorize all of them and you don't have to hard code all the values that you may or may not remember along the way. The best example of using variables is web locators. If you are familiar with automation on web, you already know that in order to correctly interact with your browser and create a test case, you must use web locators in order to have an interaction with your browser. So there are web locators that can be short, that can be long, that can be simple, or that can be complex. You wouldn't be able to create a great automation project if you start hard coding all those locators inside your test cases, because in the end, if something happens at one point and one locator changes and you have used it in tens, hundreds of test cases, you will be forced to go to that specific value, search for it, and change it. So in order not to do that, Robot Framework offers the possibility to use variables. And I'll show you what I mean. So there are three types of entities. First of all, we have the simple variable that it's declared something like this. So you have a $sign, an opening curly bracket, and you can give it the name you want. You can simply type my variable. You hit the tab key or at least two spaces. It doesn't matter how many spaces there are between the declaration and the actual value of the variable. The most important thing is that you keep a minimum of two spaces, and then you can give whatever value you want to your variable. For example, I will say my test variable. So now in my test cases, wherever I choose to call this variable, it will be replaced with the value I have here. So going on with the previous examples in which we discussed about the test cases section and tags, we can now go ahead and use the variable inside our test case to call it. So now, in order to do that, I won't be logging the message I had earlier, but I can log directly something like the name of my variable. As you can see, the IntelliBot plugin already knows that this is a known variable that is declared inside the variable section, and it already suggests that I can use this name. So I will hit enter. So now if we follow along, my test case will begin and it will log the value of the variable I declared inside the variables section. In my case, the value is my test variable. Let's go ahead and execute this test case as we did in the previous video. So I will have the robot command -d output. I will put the output inside the output folder, and then I will simply execute the test that is located inside the tests folder /test case1.robot. Once I hit enter, the test is successful, and if I look at the log, I will expand the command, and now you can see that what I logged was the actual value of my variable. So the result would be that the test will log my test variable because that is the actual value of my variable. Of course, I can go ahead and create another variable that will be my second test variable. And inside my test case, I can log this variable as well. So now I will log, the first time I will log the variable, the first variable, my variable, and the second time I will log the second variable. So what should happen inside my test case is that I should see first the log of this one and second the log of this one. Let me actually declare a log level here, so we can have a better trace of what's happening. Okay, successful execution, and if I hit the refresh button, I can see that now my test case had two keywords that were executed. The first one logged the first variable who had this value, and the second one logged the second variable which had this value. You may now ask yourself, what is the practical usage of variables? Well, most common variables are used to store values like locators for your web or mobile interface, store things like passwords or browser names, or any type of string you may or may not need during a test case. To make it even simpler, I've opened up the browser to the main Google page. I will hit F12 in order to get the developer tools, and I will inspect this element right here, which is the search button, the search text field. In order to automate this on web, I will need to have the locator of this search field in order to put some text in it. We are not going to do this in this video, and we will cover this whole section in a future video, but right now I want you to understand the necessity of having variables. So if we look here, we can see that this can be written as an XPath. So we have an input type of element with the title search. So if you are familiar with XPath, it would be something like Google search field. I will give my variable whatever name I want, and that will be equal with an XPath, like input title equals search. Let's go ahead and log this value so we actually see if it is logged correctly or not. I will execute the same test case. I will go to my log. I will expand the result, and sure enough, you can see that my test case actually logged this XPath. So in theory, this is how you create simple variables, and this is how you use them. This would be the same test case or the same scenario if instead of writing the variable here, I would simply write this thing. So now my test case will log the same message, but the difference is that now the message has been hard-coded instead of being picked up from the variable. So you can see if you have multiple test cases, and if you want to use your search field, in this case, in many test cases, you would use this XPath instead of a variable, and you would hard code its value. So once you get to the point where this locator changes, that could be a problem, because you would be forced to search all the test cases and all the lines where you declared this and replace it. Instead, if you use a variable and you call the name of that variable in all your test cases, you know that the value of the variable will be taken inside the keyword that it that executes it. And in case something changes, you only need to find the variable declaration, change the value. For example, I want to type in 𝗁𝗔, and sure enough, when I execute again and I refresh my page with my test case, I can see that now my actual test case logged in the value 𝗁𝗔 instead of search. So this is the basic understanding of the simple variable. We will use them once we get down to creating our own automation project, but for now I want you to understand the need for variables. Okay, then there is the type of list. So the syntax is at opened curved bracket, the name of your list, and close the curved bracket. So inside the list, you can have variables like test. So you actually have a list of elements. You can have a test, test2, test3, and test4. The idea here is to begin the syntax with an at least 2 spaces, and then you have the arguments. The arguments, so at least 2 spaces between the declaration and the first argument, and then at least 2 spaces between the same arguments. Okay, so in order to understand the practicality of the lists, I will tell you that this list is composed out of 4 elements, and each element has its own index. So starting from the first element and ending with the last one, this is an index 0, this is an index 1, index 2, and index 3. What I can do now is to log a specific element of my list. So for that, I will first write down list, and in order to choose one of the indexes, I can type in 2 square brackets, and let's say, for example, I want to log the element with the index 2. So we'll have 0, 1, 2. I will put here 2, and now my test case should log test3. Let's execute it like this for now, and I will show you that we will get an error, a deprecation error that is specific to Robot Framework 3, and I will then show you how to fix it. So I will say robot minus the output minus log level trace tests / test case 1.robot. Alright, so my test case actually was successful in execution, but I see here in the terminal that the declaration or the calling with at is deprecated. We should use the syntax with the $sign instead of the at symbol. We will check the result, and right now you can see that my test case actually logged in the correct value. This is a backward compatibility for now, so in the future you won't be able to call out list elements with this syntax, but you must replace it with this syntax. For now it works because this feature has not been entirely removed, but it's only generating a warning. So right now I'm going to modify this, and now I will log the name of the same list and index 2, and I should get the same result. Okay, no warning this time. I will refresh the page, and sure enough, I get the test3. Let's say, for example, I want to log in the 0 element and the 1 element. Let's execute the test now. and first time it logged test3, then it logged test1, and then it logged test2. The practical approach for the list is to be able to choose the element you want inside a keyword or inside a test case, so you control which string is called out when you actually want to call in for a value. I get it that this could be confusing for the beginning, so the declaration is with add, and when you call it, you must call it with the $sign. But these are things you should be prepared to accept, because that's how you do it. Okay, enough with the lists. Now we are going to talk about the last type of item you can put inside the variable section, and that is the dictionary. So in order to create a dictionary, you put an and sign, open curved bracket, you type in dictionary, and the way you type in a dictionary is something like this. For example, you want to put inside a dictionary a username and a password that you are using inside your automated test cases. So I would type in username equals, and I will give it a value, test user, for example. Again, 2 spaces between each argument, and then I would have a password equals demo, for example. So now I know that inside my test case, I want to use the username that has this name, test user, and the password that has this value, demo. And the way to use that is to call out the dictionary name. So my dictionary is actually called dictionary. Open and close 2 square brackets, and then you tell the test which type of key do you want to log from this dictionary. So instead of having indexes like in lists 0, 1, 2, 3, now you have keys. Each set of data like this is a dictionary key with a key value. So let's say, for example, I want to log the username, and in the second case, I want to log the password. And in case you are wondering how I'm duplicating these lines so easily, you should know that all you have to do is to go to the end of the line and click Ctrl D on your keyboard or Command D on your Mac, and that will duplicate the existing line, and you can modify whichever value you want for your next line. So now if I try to execute this test, what it will do is to log in first the value of the username key inside the dictionary, so that would be test user, and second one, it will be the value of the dictionary password key, so that is demo. Let's run that right now, and we should be getting the same error as we did in case of lists. So the calling with the and sign is also deprecated, and when calling out for dictionaries, you should also use the $sign. Let's first look at the test log with this calling, and then we will modify it and we will fix it. So the first keyword logged the value for the username, which is test user. If we open up the test case, we can see this is the case here. And the second one logged the value of the password, which is demo. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found its content interesting. And in the next video, we will finally tackle the keywords section, which uses and combines everything we have learned so far. If you think that this was interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you again in the next videos.